Hi everyone, thanks for joining today. Just going to give it a few more minutes while we wait for everyone to join. Thanks. Thanks everyone for your patience there. So welcome to our second Sage Intacct Function Focus webinar. This webinar will show you the collections module in Sage Intacct. For those who I haven't met before, my name is Laura Lee and I'm an account manager for Sage Intacct UKI customers. My colleague Gary Preston is a new addition to the team and he'll be working closely with many of you as your account manager. We work alongside your customer success managers with our roles focusing on commercials, licenses and functionality. I'll be presenting today alongside Nick Pooney, our senior developer for the Sage Intacct Collections module. With Nick is Tim Lopez, who's the product manager for the Collections module and will be supporting and answering questions. To make the session interactive, please post your questions in the chat box during the session. We'll pause at intervals as we go through the demo, respond and show the answers where relevant, and then we'll open up the floor and unmute everybody at the end. You can ask the experts your questions or just type them in the chat. We'll make sure we follow up to everyone who we weren't able to answer it during the session. Please also look out for the survey at the very end, where you can request follow-ups, suggest content for future webinars, and give us feedback. You can see our contact details here, and as I mentioned, we'll reach out to customers following the session, so do use the survey to request that. So on the agenda today, we've run through the welcome there, and I'll move on to introducing Sage Intacct Collections next, and we'll cover the challenges we see and also the features and benefits of the module. And then I'll hand over to Nick for the product demo, and we'll move to question and answer. So manually controlling the accounts receivable collections process can be a daunting task. In addition to the high invoice processing costs and utilising limited accounting resources, manual collections can also negatively impact your cash flow by increasing the days sales outstanding. Adding headcount can help to overcome the challenges, but this comes at a cost. Sage Intacct Collections streamlines the collections and dunning process, shortens the cash cycle, increases accuracy, and improves customer satisfaction. The challenges we hear from customers, you're all probably very familiar with. No centralized data, manual error from lack of automation, extended DSO reduces cash flow and impacts your customer experience. The collections module can help you improve the process and the results that you see through comprehensive automation. So you can automate and streamline the day in the life of a collections analyst by allowing them to focus on invoices and customers that carry the most risk or require attention. With dunning notices sent out automatically from Sage Intacct, based on criteria and templates established by you. The need to maintain separate records such as notes, databases or Excel are eliminated. Here you can see the features and benefits of the module. The features include collection case ownership, process management, and collections information in one place. The benefits you'll see is you can bring order to collections, collect your receivables fast, automate processes and reduce manual efforts, automate dunning and collection letters, have promises to pay, and set up reminder rules. You can address 3 of the most common issues with collections by centralizing the collection process and automating the tedious tasks, all without adding headcount to your collections team. With structure, automation, and visibility into the collections process, your analysts can shift their attention towards higher value activities that drive cash flow and improve customer relationships. I'll hand over to Nick now to walk you through the collections module demo. Feel free to post your questions in the chat box and we'll pause as we go to answer questions. And then, as I mentioned, we'll open up the floor to continue this question and answer session at the end. Over to you, Nick.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be able to show you the collections module today. Just give me 1 second to share my screen and make sure that everyone can see it. You should be able to see my Intacct screen at the moment.
We can, Nick, yes.
Perfect. And so I'll be walking through a demo of the collections module and give you an idea of the different configuration options, and as well as some of the key bits of functionality within the collection solution. As Laura mentioned, I'll stop in between the demo just to see if there are any questions, and then we'll open it up for more questions at the end of the demo. One of the nice things of the collections module is the ability to score and rate customers' AR aging. And you can see that by visiting the collections dashboard. And when the dashboard loads, you'll see over in the top left that you have a list of collections cases, which is a central part of the collections module. And it has a case rating, which helps you prioritize, which cases or which customers to focus on first in terms of priority. We look at this rating as sort of a risk rating, which is a composite of the total amount that's past due for a customer, and then each individual invoice that's past due, and the number of weeks that it's past due as well, to sort of help you prioritize, which cases, deserve the most attention. So it's not just about the total amount that's past due, but also how past due, those invoices are. If we dig into a particular case, the case is also a central place for you to work on collections activity, and provides a summary of all of the open invoices. You can see here, this shows the oldest invoice that is past due, the amount of the oldest invoice that's past due, and also the total amount of the invoices that are past due. You can see on the collections case who is the credit controller or the person charged with following up with this particular customer's invoices. I can see a workflow, so I can see the stage of the dunning process for this particular customer. And as I scroll down, you can kind of see activity around collections activity for this customer. So you can see open invoices. You can choose to show payments and adjustments and overpayments, and dunning notices that have been recently sent out, along with manual emails, notes, tasks, and you can also upload documents as well. If there's any supporting documents that you want to attach to the case as well, the case becomes a central place for you to do your work. Next, I'd like to show you the admin and configuration settings, because that gives you a really good idea of the available features and functions within the collections module. And so I switched over to the top level of this test company. And you can see that there are 8 or 9 different steps that you can walk through in terms of enabling different features and functions within the collections module. The first one is, how would you like your dunning notices to be sent out? The 2 options are sending out a consolidated dunning notice based on the oldest invoice that's past due, or you can send out dunning notices per invoice. And so an example of a consolidated dunning notice would look something like this. So you can see here, I have a dunning notice where I am, the context of my dunning notice is the oldest invoice that is past due. I'm providing the payment information for that invoice. And I'm also providing a reference to other invoices that are either coming due or are also past due. But I'm the language of my dunning notice is focused on the oldest invoice that's past due, along with a summary of other invoices that may also be in the system. And if I were to switch this setting to per invoice, and then my dunning notice would be, the language would be focused on each individual invoice, and the dunning language would be based on, how many days past due that particular invoice may be. Next in the configuration, I have the ability to automatically send out statements on a particular day of the month. And you have some options in terms of what you would like to include in a statement. So you can choose to show just past due invoices, but if you also want to show credits and adjustments on your statement, you can do that as well. And then here's an option where you can enable payment information to be shown on your cases as well, or that can be turned off for simplicity. The second tab shows a series of different stages that you can configure. So you can configure additional stages within the collections module, and I'll show you an example of the value of these stages as I get further along in my demo. The third option is around email preferences. So here you can define different email addresses in terms of where the dunning notices are coming from by entity. So you can have different from email addresses. You can also define a blind carbon copy address, which can be used to either send copies of emails to a group mailbox. It can also be used to email dunning notices directly to Salesforce, so that these dunning emails show up as activity within your CRM system as well. I can choose to default the email address that it's coming from by entity, or I can also send emails coming from the credit controller who's assigned to each case. On step 4, I can choose as a default for all of my dunning activity where I'll be sending my dunning notices. So in this example, I am sending the dunning notices to my primary contact on the customer record. I can also default it to the bill to contact if that's designated on the customer record, or I can default it to the bill to contact on each invoice as well. Step number 5 is very similar to number 4 in that you're able to pick a bill to contact or a primary contact. There's no transaction contact because there would essentially be multiple transaction bill to, so that's the option that's eliminated there. And then on number 6, you can define which entities you wish to enable. So you can enable 1, 2, or all entities. In terms of your configuration, you can define language and date formats. And you can also choose to send out dunning notices by customer type, which is great if you have different languages or different language or messaging for, let's say, standard customers versus enterprise customers. You can create workflows by customer type as well. Number 7 gives you the ability to default the remit to info, and you'll see more of that in the examples of dunning messages that I sent out. I'll show you. And on number 8 is a great new feature that we've added where you can define a threshold. So in my configuration here, if I have a balance on an invoice that is £5 or less, I won't send a nastygram to that customer. You can set that value to be, £1 or less or whatever you'd want that to be, so that you're not sending, stern messages to your customers for small amounts. And then lastly, in the configuration is the runtime. So you can choose the runtime for dunning notices and statements to go out for the configuration. Next, I'd like to show you the template. So you have the ability to easily define the content of your dunning notices. And I'll show you there are a few different template types. So you can create dunning notices, you can also create statements, and you can also create template emails as well. So if you're in a situation where you're sending the same sort of email content on a regular basis, you can create message templates and quickly send those messages from the system as well. So in this configuration, you can see in the UK entity, I have a courtesy notice that goes out 3 days before the invoice is due. And then I have a past due notice that goes out 31 days after the due date. And then I have a final demand that goes out 91 days after the due date. And so what's neat about this workflow is that you can send a sort of a friendly reminder here. With this stage, you can send as many different past due notices as you want. So you could configure the system to send out 10 different past due notices at various intervals. And then once you send out a dunning notices that's marked as final demand, the system will basically say this is the last notice that we're sending you, and we'll stop sending dunning notices once the stage hits final demand. And then finally, I've got an example of a message template. So if I go ahead and edit my courtesy notice, you can see the configuration options in terms of different types, and there's a very easy to use template editor in terms of this content, and you can add various merge fields as well into the message editor. So before I move into the cases and show you some of the activity on a particular customer, are there any questions that I can answer?
Hey, Nick, so there were a couple questions that came in. You'll allow time for other questions to come in. But so one question was, is the session being recorded? And the answer is yes. It's being recorded and it'll be available on the community site after the call. And then another question was, is this an additional module or is it not as standard? And so the Sage Intacct SIG collections module is an additional module. It's not out of the standard Intacct product. And so I don't see any other questions, Nick.
Sounds good. I'll keep going and let me know if there are any others that come up.
Sounds good.
So digging a little deeper into the case. So as I mentioned, that the top section of this case gives you a summary of the collections activity for a particular customer and gives you sort of a nice summary view of what's going on with this customer. You can drill down into different invoices. So from here I can look at a particular invoice. And even within this invoice, I can drill down into a collections tab and get back to any activity that's related to this particular invoice. So I can see that there was a courtesy notice sent, against this particular invoice to this customer, and when it was sent. I can actually drill down into this email and look at a copy of this email, and I can see that we basically said, hey, thanks for your business. We're just letting you know that this invoice is going to be due soon, and then send your payment back. I just head back over to the case. As I mentioned, you can see the history of the dunning notices that are sent. So I did show you an example of what the actual email looks like in your inbox. If I want to look at the dunning notice within the system, I can see that too. I can see when it was sent, and I can see a copy of that message as well. And then I can also see things like notes. So I can see that there was a note letting us know that we spoke to Jane at the customer, and she let us know that the invoice is scheduled to be paid in the next payment run. I can also see that there's a task out there to follow up with this customer and make sure that that first invoice is received and accepted. And just for an example, I uploaded an example of a VAT registration certificate as well that you can see here on the case as well. Another way to look at the collections info is by going to the customer record. So if I go here, you can see that there is a new tab on the collection on the customer record as well. And I can see here a customer rating. If a customer has promised to pay their invoice by a certain date, I can enter that date here, and I can turn off the dunning notices during that time. I can also override the default configuration that I was showing you in the admin section. So if you had a alternative delivery preference for this particular customer, I could set that here. The same is true for the statements. I can disable dunning notices for a particular customer, and I can also disable statements for a particular customer as well. So I can do that independently. So just turning off dunning notices does not mean that the statements are turned off as well, or vice versa. And a little further down, you can see we have this concept of customer stage, which is an example of the workflows that I was mentioning in the admin screen as well. I've actually added a custom stage here called green and in good health. And I can also see who the collections analyst is and see the same info I was looking at on the case as well. So here too, within the customer record, I can see all of the collections activity as well. And then finally, I'd like to show you an example of how the collections module works hand in hand with the core product. So here I've created a custom AR aging report, and I've pulled in information from the collections module. So alongside the aging buckets for a particular customer, I can also show which ones are in good health. I can see which ones are disputed. This particular customer disputes the delivery of the services that the invoices are being referenced, I think a little further down below, I have another example where there was an error on the invoice and we've suspended the collection. So it kind of adds more context to your AR aging. And I think that's it, Laura. I think that's the extent of my demo. Let's see if there are any other questions.
Yep, there are a couple now. This first one, I'll let you, Nick, answer. So with emails, is this configured with Outlook?
It is not configured with Outlook. So if the question is, can you reply back into Intacct? It will not let you do that. But yeah, it doesn't work with Outlook in that sense. It'll work with any mail client or any email client.
Perfect. And then another one, and I think this one you could show, and I'll put the answer inside the chat. How or where do we add notes against an invoice after chasing a customer?
Oh, great question. So there's a couple of places you can do that. So I can go into the collections case and I can add a note here. So I can come over here and look and create a new note. And then I can put a subject, some description, and pick a note type. And you can see that it's already referenced the collections case. And I can look up and attach notes to a particular invoice as well. I can also do that from the invoice itself. So if I were to go back to my case and I'm working on this particular invoice, I can come here onto the collections tab and add a note from the invoice. And I've already sort of attached or referenced the invoice here. And I'll just put followed up on invoice payment. Oops. And hit save. Oops, just need to pick a type. And now I have that note against the invoice. So check is in the mail. And I can also see that on the customer record as well. So if I go back to the customer, that note is now here as well. Any other questions?
Yep, they're coming in. So here's another one. Is there an inbox within Sage that reply messages go to?
There is not, unfortunately, not today. It's something that we want to implement in terms of being able to reply back into Intacct, but that's not available today, unfortunately.
Perfect. Another one was, can you run reports on all customers and their current position with collections?
Absolutely, 100%.
Does Intacct have a diary for collections?
We don't have a diary per se, but this is something I can show you. So if you were to look at the, if we look at the dashboard, for example, the dashboard will show you, these dashboards can be customized for different individuals as well. So this can show not only the cases, but individual tasks by follow-up. And then these tasks can be represented as a calendar view as well. So if I go to collections tasks and go to calendar, I can look at different tasks in a calendar format. So I can see that I've got a task here. I hope that answers the question.
I think so. Where do you report out of in this module? Are there any pre-built dashboards for the additional subscription fee? And so I think Nick had started with that. If you could show the dashboards that do come with Intacct collections. So there's an analyst dashboard. Additionally, there's 2 other manager dashboards that come with some pre-built performance cards and metrics. Obviously, this is all customizable, but they do come with the collections module subscription.
That's
Do you want
right.
to add anything there?
Yeah, I have a sort of a simplified version of the dashboards in my demo company. I'll just pop open another company, another environment, and kind of show you another example of the dashboards. Just bear with me.
No problem. I will keep going here. Is a demo available before we purchase? So regarding a demo, we do have a previously recorded demo, and we're also working on a more updated version of the demo. If you're requesting like an in-person demo, then I think that's something that can be set up with your account manager as well.
Absolutely.
And then, so if a client was to reply, where will this send to, or will it bounce back?
So that it'll go back to the reply to address that was configured in the message. So for example, I'll bring up an example of the message I was showing. So this is the courtesy notice, and in my configuration, I had said, send the from address is my accounts receivable at the company name, and so that's where the message will go to. And so I would suggest using like a generic mailbox like this that you can send messages back to, so that multiple people can have access to those responses as well. There's a lot of flexibility around where those messages are sent from, whether it's coming from Mark, who's my credit controller for this particular customer, or a generic email address for the entity, or you could set one single address for all entities.
Perfect. And then I think we have one more. Looks like some members would like to share this with other team members. And so will the demo be available or a test system? There's Gary, do you know if there is a demo on the community? If not, I think we have one that we could provide.
I'd say we're in the middle of doing an updated demo recording. We do not provide test environments, unfortunately. So we'd be happy to meet with you and answer any questions or concerns, or show you any specific functionality. And hopefully the updated demo recording, will give you a good idea what the solution can and can't do.
Yeah, and we can set that up as account managers as well. So we'll reach out following the session, and we can set up those one-to-one sessions so you can really go into some detail and have some bespoke configuration in there.
Absolutely. So here's an example on my screen of what I consider like a manager's dashboard that is, is looking at all collections activity across all credit analysts. And you can see, not only the cases that are prioritized by score and rating, but I can see the AR aging. I can see my top 10 customers by balance. I can see which one of my staff has, not enough cases to follow up on, or maybe has too many. And I can also look at open tasks and payments and so on. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of the dashboard, and we encourage folks to use the dashboard as a starting point, and then use the case to centralize your activity, so you're not jumping around across different parts of the application to do your work. This is an example of an individual's dashboard, and so these records are filtered for a particular user. So it just highlights their collections cases and their tasks and so on, their notes, and just helps filter the info that they need to focus on. Just wait for the aging to run. There you go, there's the aging. Any other questions?
I think that is it. I think your question actually just answered this one, this last one, which was, does the dashboard show you monthly cash collections, DSO, debtor days, slow payers, top value accounts? So I think you just asked for the details provided within the dashboards.
Yeah, I think we could do some of those. I don't think we could do all of them, but definitely DSO. Yes, we could certainly do that. Top 10 customers by balance, absolutely. I think you can segment the customers by rating. So if particular customers are slow to pay, you can give them a rating and use that rating to segment how quickly they're paying. And that's the type of info that can then show up on your AR aging. So again, on this AR aging report that I've created with the standard report writer within Intacct, now is I can see aging for a particular customer. I can see who's responsible for following up with this customer. I can see this customer has a D rating in terms of their follow-up. This one is in good standing, but is marked as a B because I've got a lot of historical invoices that haven't been paid in a long time, and that's just a function of this demo instance. But I would consider using this AR aging report as well in terms of rating the health of your receivables. Since we have an extra minute, I think I'll also show you how you can send manual emails from within the collections module as well. So if I were to send a new email, a manual email, we've got a great interface that lets you send ad hoc messages and templates as well. So I had mentioned earlier the ability to send sort of just template messages. So here you can see I've got different message types. I'll stick with other, and I can pick my sort of like my canned course, my thank you message, and add that. So I don't have to keep typing that content each time, and I'll pre-populate that message template. I could do the same with manual dunning notices as well. So if I wanted to, repeat a dunning message that I've sent or planned to send, I could do that. I can pick from my list of available templates. I'll do this courtesy notice. Next. Oops, I'll click add, sorry, wrong button. I can pick the invoice that it's related to. And then I can send it to whoever I want. I can modify who it's coming from. I can also modify the text of the content as well. So if I wanted to tweak this message before I sent it out, I could do that as well, and then manually send the message to. And so that's all I have for sure this time. Laura, I'm going to hand it back. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tim.
One more came through. It is, can you send invoices and attachments or a downloaded link?
You could only attach invoices through the manual emails today. It's a great question. We do not automatically attach copies of the invoice today, but that feature is coming out by the end of the year. So by the end of the year, we'll be attaching PDF copies of the invoices in the dunning emails, and that should be out by December.
Great. Well, I think we can take this opportunity to We'll unmute everybody, see if anyone wants to shout out any questions. Although I think we've had lots of questions there, so we've covered everything. But we'll unmute it, and then I've just got to follow up at the end as well.
And that may have been my fault for answering all the questions.
Doesn't look like it's letting me unmute people anyway. It says unmute, but everyone still looks microphoned. But everyone can still pop in the chat here and the question box if anything comes up. I'll just move into my final slide here. If there's any more questions, we can certainly answer them.
All right, well, if there are no questions, I certainly, again, appreciate the opportunity to do the demo. And back over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Nick. That was really good. Lots of questions, which is always good to see. Lots of interaction there. And of course, we will follow up and we can set up those bespoke demos where relevant. So just wanted to bring up some next steps for everybody here. So to view the content, as Tim mentioned, we'll be setting the recording into the community. So to register for the community, you do need to follow a few steps. And if anybody has any difficulties, just reach out to Gary or I. You'll need your email and a customer ID and a company ID. A lot of customers get mixed up and put their user ID in, which it isn't. So if you can't find that information from your welcome email, just reach out to your account manager and we'll help you with that. And then if you navigate to the function focus group, the recording will be in there. It's also really worthwhile joining the Lunch and Learn group as well, which is run by our customer success team. And that's more about adopting and quick tips and things that's already in your system, such as bank feeds, setting up bank feeds, setting up your reports. It's all that sort of adoption functionality within the Lunch and Learn group. And the next Lunch and Learn is going to be around making tax digital, and that is on the 18th of April, and the invites will be coming out soon. And we will be running another function focus session sometime in April. The content and the date is to be confirmed for that. So finally, we'll have a survey come through at the end of this session. So please do give us feedback. Let us know what else you'd like to see in future webinars. Let us know if you'd like any follow-ups and let us know how we might be able to improve. And now we've actually had a couple more questions come through. Tim, I'll hand back over to you and you and Nick can go through those.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's see here. There's a few came through. Okay. Can you send invoices and oh no, that wrong one. I'm sorry. Can you print a dunning letter rather than email?
Yeah, absolutely. They can be printed off. We don't have a batch function to print them off, but if you are mailing them, I think we could help you build a report or with a merge function that also lets you print them off into Word as a merge document.
Perfect. And then I think the last two are just thanks, which you're welcome. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you're right. They are just saying thank you there rather than questions. So that's great. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Thank you, Nick and Tim, for supporting and showing us that really great content. We'll be doing the follow-ups afterwards. Got a bit of time left for everybody at the end of our day, so we'll wrap up here. But do complete the survey if you'd like some further information. Thanks, everybody.
Perfect. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Nick. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.